Good morning, everybody. First of all, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to such an important topic to give overview on ECMO. I'm Dr. Vivek Gupta from Dayanand Medical College and Hospital. I'm a consultant cardiac anesthesia and intensive care. So, as we all know, that intensive care unit, our emergency department is a very dynamic area, and all of us come across with various kind of a life-threatening situations like cardiac arrest. Our patient is having a summary cardiovascular collapse due to several etiologies. Our patient is presenting with acute coronary event. Our intoxicated patient, or any patient who is coming with a massive pulmonary embolism and he is nearly arrested or he is having a cardiac arrest. And the question always comes when we are doing a resuscitation of these patients at various levels, then if the conventional therapies fail, what options we have? So before starting my presentation, I would like to talk about two cases which actually as a physicians, intensivists, or emergency physicians we come across daily. Very commonly on this zone of the country, aluminum phosphide poisoning. So let's take a case, a 25-year-old guy who took 3 tablets of aluminum phosphide, who did not have any previous history, presented to the emergency department with unrecordable BP, tachypnea, cold clammy peripheries. When we examined him, he was tachycardic with a blood pressure of 70 and respiratory rate of 42. As resuscitative measures, immediately IV fluid was started, a bolus of 1 liter followed by uh, other boluses, inotropic support with the dopamine and norepinephrine. Radial artery was cannulated and internal jugular was cannulated. We sent an ABG, but still hemodynamics remains the same. Further fluid and inotropes. ABG showed severe metabolic acidosis with a lactate of 13.4. 2D echo showed 18% ejection fraction with a global hypokinesia. To improve the hemodynamics, vasopressin was further added. After an hour, patient remains same. In fact, he worsened and he became drowsy, so we had to intubate this patient. ABG further worsened, inotropes went up, and ejection fraction was just 15% with a global hypokinesia with RV dysfunction. So this is the case scenario which we come across. And what do you think that what will happen to this patient next? We know very well that these patients will start throwing arrhythmias or they will just go in the shock and they ultimately die. Another case, which during the COVID period, we have come across very frequently. A young guy presenting to the emergency department to a COVID area who is COVID positive with a tachycardia, with a saturation 86%, tachypneic, chest is full of crepes, and he started with the oxygen, NIV support, D-dimer, ferritin, CRP were very high. He was managed as per the guidelines with the steroid. He got remdesivir and tocilizumab also given to this patient, but he did not show any improvement and he was further intubated with a high inspiratory pressure and with the PEEP of 15, his still saturation is just 68 to 72%. His X-ray had the bilateral opacities along with the blood gases again showing a respiratory acidosis with a very low PO2 of 42. CT chest showed a ground glass opacity with a severity score of 21 by 25. In spite of increasing PEEP, his saturation remained 75 to 80% for next 3 hours, and now he started requiring a vasopressors to maintain his hemodynamics. And he has a worsening of gas exchanges in spite of good uh, PEEP and 100% oxygen. And he further developed a metabolic and respiratory acidosis. And we know that very well that we have come across with a lot of mortality even in young patients who presented to the emergency department or to the COVID intensive care unit in such a manner. So what we did for the first case, we did put this patient on VA ECMO, and gradually this inotrope started reducing. After 12 hours, his metabolic and lactic acidosis started improving. His urine output started improving. His AKI part started settling down. And on day 5th, his ejection fraction was 35% down, and we removed the VA ECMO. On day 7th, we removed the mechanical ventilation, and this patient was discharged on day 12. What happened to the second case of COVID ARDS? We initiated with the VV ECMO percutaneously. His blood gases started showing improvement. We came down to the ventilation to prevent the further lung injury. We maintained an oxygen saturation of 88 to 90% for this patient. On day 17, we were able to wean off ECMO and decannulate it. On day 24th, though we need to do tracheostomy, but on 24th, we made him off ventilator. And on day 29th, tracheostomy tube was also removed. And this patient was discharged just with 2 liters of oxygen on day 36. So both these patients, we know that if there would not have been an ECMO support, none of these patients would have survived. So this basically was started in 1950 when the John Gibbon started gave a concept of cardiopulmonary bypass. So at that time, several reports was published, and in 1970, early 70s, this was started for the patient in a patient with the trauma victim and other patients. Next few years, ECMO was used in the pediatric as well as in the adult population, but with the report from National Institute of Heart USA, these use of ECMO in the ARDS was totally stopped, and for next 2 decades, actually ECMO was restricted to only few center and restricted only for the post cardiopulmonary uh, heart failure. But in 2009, again, there was a resurgence of the use of ECMO once this H1N1 pandemic. During that pandemic, several groups suggested that ECMO has a better chance of survival. And during this COVID pandemic, what we have seen that those patients who could not have survived with any modality, we were able to help them out with the help of ECMO. And thanks to technology, that in 1972, you can see this much size of the oxygenator was there. And in 2021, this is such a small oxygenator, which we are barely able to see, and we can have good access to the patient, which was difficult in 1972. This is also registry, which is basically an organization, international organization, which collects the data across the world on ECMO, and they show a good survival rate in cases of neonatal and pediatric population. However, even in adult pulmonary cases, the survival is nearly 60%. However, still survival for the ECPRs and cardiac ECMOs are not very good. And these are the number of centers which are increasing day by day. Every year there is a increase in the number of center, and we have seen this during this COVID pandemic. There are several centers who have started performing ECMO in their hospitals. So a question comes. We have the mechanical ventilatory support where we have a conventional mechanical supports. We have a APRV, NAVA, like an advanced mode of ventilation, and we have other measures to manage these patients who have a respiratory issues or multi-organ involvement. Similarly, to manage the cardiac patient, we have vasopressors, inotropes, IABP, temporary pacemaker in case of patient is having a complete heart block. So question comes, do we really need ECMO? To answer this question, actually we should answer few questions. Our questions to ourselves should be, why a patient dies? So let's understand why a patient dies in the intensive care unit. The most important problem we come across is the multi-organ failure. Because these patients are on the ventilator, they develop ventilator-induced lung injury. Because high ventilatory settings, there is always a hemodynamic variation, and we keep pushing a vasopressors or other drugs to maintain the um, hemodynamics of this patient. And during this shock state, we keep giving a lot of fluid, which leads to organ edema. And during the course of ICU stay, they develop a secondary sepsis. And ultimately, this leads to a global or regional tissue perfusion compromise. And we know that when once another organ has involved, the mortality goes further increases by 10%. All these contributes to the multi-organ failure. So basically, ECMO helps to give a organ support. And this is basically an extracorporeal life support where we put an external artificial circuit, and you can see that the blood is taken from the patient, and this then it reaches to a pump, and with the pump it is being pushed to the oxygenator, and from oxygenator it, after oxygenation and further gas exchange, it is going back to the patient. The other terminology is what we commonly use it for ECLS or emergency cardiopulmonary bypass. So we can say it's analogous to a cardiopulmonary bypass where there's a lot of modification has been done so that it can use for the prolonged period, and where we give a very less heparin to prevent any bleeding complications. And most importantly, we can perform ECMO not in the operation theater but outside the operation theater in the ICU setting. So basically, ECMO help to sustaining life when there is a cardiac arrest. It provides oxygen and help in removing the carbon dioxide. Try to maintain the blood pressures to an hemodynamically unstable patient, and thus it helps in the maintaining tissue perfusion and oxygenation, which is actually a main important goal for preventing any organ damage. So we can say ECMO is a bridge. Why bridge? Because it is either patient will recover. This is not the actual therapy. So we wait till the patient recovers completely and then we remove the ECMO. So it can be a bridge to recovery. It can be a bridge to another bridge, which can be kept for a longer time because we cannot keep ECMO for a very long time. So for other LVADs, RVADs, or other mechanical assist devices, it can be a bridge to bridge. Or if patients' organs are not recovering, like a heart or lung are not recovering, then it can be a bridge to transplant. At some time a bad situation comes, which even we have seen during the COVID pandemic, when organs are not recovering and there is no possibility of the transplant, then it's just a bridge to nowhere. And that's really a frustrating situation. But as a critical care specialist or ECMO specialist, we come across with this kind of a situation as well. So when to do ECMO, this is the biggest question to how to identify the situation. So the first rule says the condition should be reversible. Before putting any patient on ECMO, we should define the goal, what exactly we want. So if there is a reversibility, we can easily put a patient on it. And second, when the patient is unresponsive to the conventional therapy, we have reached to a highest level of conventional therapy, either vasopressors, inotropes, or mechanical ventilation, and patient oxygenation is not improving, hemodynamics is not improving, and we need to give rest to the organ so that this will help to recover or improve the organ function. So what are the different type of ECMO we have? We can have the VECMO, that's a veno-arterial ECMO, which can support both heart and lung. You can see the femoral artery and femoral vein, two cannulas are placed, and we are supporting a heart and lung both. The second option is the VV ECMO, where this allow only a respiratory support. It doesn't support the heart, so it is purely for the lung conditions. And we can have a multiple variants of VAV, VV kind of ECMO when we support both the organs simultaneously. At some time, we just need a carbon dioxide removal, and in that situation, we can have AV ECMO or venous ECMO, where we do not put any pump. So you can see this is the veno-venous ECMO where we have taken the left femoral vein and a left internal jugular vein for doing the ECMO. Or there are certain double cannula are present as well, where we can place single cannula with the double ports. So this can be used as a single channel for access and return for the blood. This is the VECMO. You can see from the femoral artery and femoral vein, we are taking the blood from the femoral vein and returning back to the femoral artery. And there is, you can see, appreciate another cannula, which is going in the other direction for maintaining the distal perfusion, what we call it as, to maintain the limb perfusion. The other site we can use besides femoral is the axillary, subclavian, and in the neonates, we can use the carotid artery as well. Central cannulation is done during the post-cardiac surgical procedure when patient separation from the cardiopulmonary bypass is not possible. In that situation, we just leave the cannula in the aorta and right atrium, and we can continue with the ECMO. So the difference, as I said, VECMO will support the heart and lung both. VV-ECMO will support only the lung. VECMO can be used in the RV failure. However, VV-ECMO will not. In fact, it can lead to RV failure if it is a prolonged one. And certain complications which are peculiar as a North-Sirius syndrome for a VECMO, which is not in the VV-ECMO, it has its own peculiar complication like a recirculation. So what are the indications? For a VA-ECMO, usually if there is acute myocardial infarction with the cardiogenic shock, which is unresponsive to the conventional, or there is a myocarditis, or there is a post-cardiotony failure, or acute heart failure because of any drug or toxins, or even post-cardiac arrest patient who, as a part of advanced cardiac life support, we can always do an eCPR, ECMO CPR, where during conventional CPR, we place a cannula and put the patient on ECMO who do not respond to the conventional CPR techniques. For VV-ECMO, it's a ARDS of any kind, viral, bacterial, any pneumonia where oxygenation is a problem. Pulmonary embolism, it's a unique thing where both VV-ECMO and VA-ECMO may be indicated. Like when patient is having a problem with the oxygenation, it's a VV-ECMO. And when there is a cardiovascular collapse, we can switch over to the VA-ECMO. Even alveolar hemorrhage, severe bronchospasm, these all can be an indication for VVA. But before thinking of indication, we should be aware of the contraindication because it's an extensive procedure, and uh, we are going to hypernize these patients as an anticoagulant. So any patient who is having a disseminated malignancy, or there is a aortic dissection, or there is an irrecoverable condition, or patient is having an intracranial hemorrhage, or any irreversible neurological condition, these are absolute contraindication. However, in certain patients, we have to look for the financial, cognitive, psychiatric, and social aspect. These can be relative contraindication for ECMO, or when there is an advanced age or obesity, these are all the relative contraindication for it. So I'll just briefly touch that what exactly is the ECMO. There are hardware, disposable, and we need to develop an ECMO cart where all necessary articles are placed during placement of ECMO, and there should be a checklist so that you don't miss any step while initiating ECMO or you are proceeding for ECMO. So this is basically a console where there are control knob and panels which shows various pressures and flows, and with the knob we can adjust it. Then we have, this is the core thing, oxygen blender, which can adjust the oxygenation, how much oxygen we want to give a fire to, as well as the how much flow of gases we want to give so that we can wash out the carbon dioxide. This is basically pump, centrifugal pump, which is the heart of this machine, which runs, and with this it can create a negative pressure to get the blood and push the blood further forward to return back to the patient. This pump head is supported by various phones. It can be different of different companies, but basic principles remains the same, though they have the different priming volume, which an intensivist or ECMO specialist should. These are the oxygenator. These are basically a lungs which helps participate in the gas exchange. And here the blood gases flow in between, and outside the blood flows. So there is no direct contact of the blood and the gas. There is an interface in between. So again, these are made up of polymethyl pentane so that they can be kept for 2 to 3 weeks or even sometimes more than that. Otherwise, normal oxygenators can be used for 24 to 36 hours only. This is the complete ECMO circuit. You can see these are the tubings which helps the blood to take off from the patient's body and return back to the patient body. These are made up of polyvinyl chloride, and these are medical grade plastics so that it doesn't actively react or damage the cells more. And sometimes they are coated with the Bioline or with the heparin or albumin. These are the cannula, which are advanced cannulas, which can help for the percutaneous placement. You can see on the right hand side venous cannula, which are the longer one, and arterial cannula. These are the return cannulas, and these are the smaller one. These are available with a different size depending upon the patient age and weight. We decide about the cannula for getting the access with the venous side and for returning arterial side. And this is cannulation is the most important step in the during the ECMO procedure, because if your cannulation fails or it is not correct, you can never initiate or run ECMO for any patient. So this is how the line looks like. You can see this is the venous head where the blood is coming. It is coming to the pump head. Now it is going to the oxygenator, where you can see this the temperature controlling unit, which maintains the temperature because the blood is coming to the foreign surface. There is a risk of bleeding, hypothermia, and there is an oxygenator where you can see this green tubing. The gases are being flowing through this, and the gas exchange takes place in the oxygenator. And once it is oxygenated, it is being returned to the patient through this arterial line. And you can see console. Through this console, we can adjust the oxygenator, the run of the ECMO. So ECMO is an integration of machine as well as the patient. And here, the person behind the ECMO machine is probably more important rather than this machine, because he has to monitor the patient parameter, monitor the ECMO parameter, and monitor the integration of these two so that the maximum benefit of ECMO can be achieved in any patient. So all these vital parameters, right hand saturation in cases of VECMO, mean arterial pressure and pulse pressure, especially in cases of VECMO, arterial and venous saturation, they means ABG and mixed venous, end tidal carbon dioxide, urine output, and echocardiography. You must be trained for echocardiography so that you can do it daily. And if possible, we should look for the cerebral oxygenation with the help of nurse. Other hematological parameters, look for CBC, blood sugar, ABG, and always assess the neurological status of these patients, because there is always a risk of thromboembolic events or intracranial hemorrhage. So assessment of neurological status is very, very important. Always look for urine output and urine color, because color will give you a good guide for any hemolysis which is occurring because of the machine itself. We try to maintain the ACT around 180 to 160 to 180. We keep checking it, and APGT should be maintained 60 to 70 seconds while a patient is on it. However, the advanced coagulation parameters should be monitored with the help of TEG or ROTEM or other devices. But these are the basic which actually should be followed at every places. Then we always look for the monitoring of accuracy, efficacy, and safety of the ECMO system. For that, we look at the blood flow rate, gas flow rate, what is the revolution per minute, and what is the membrane function by looking at the pre and post membrane pressures, as well as pre and post membrane oxidation. The efficacy for VECMO, we look at the mean altered pressure. For VVECMO, we look at the blood gases to look for PaO2 and PCO2, and always look for adequate tissue perfusion with the help of lactate and looking at the mixed oxygen saturation. Safety, always an ECMO specialist should look for circuit integrity, various pressures pre and post pump pressures, coagulation status, hematological status, X-ray, and he should always look at the puncture site and patient as a whole, that there is no complication associated with the machine itself. But we should be ready for any kind of a complication when a patient is on ECMO, for a pump failure, malfunction of pump, or even the membrane can fail, and which can just stop the gas exchange and patient can collapse. There is always a risk of air embolism if there is a leak in any system on the negative side. There can be risk of catheter-related vascular or cardiac complication. Any perforation can occur. There can be circuit clotting and even hemolysis if the pump head is not working well. Other complication, we know that it's an extensive procedure. We are putting a wide bore cannula, so there is a risk of bleeding because we are using a heparin or anticoagulant. So there is always a risk of cerebral hemorrhage. There can be ischemia, end organ failure, renal failure, non-recovery of the lung or non-recovery of the heart. There may be risk of infection, and in early phases, patient will have the systemic inflammatory response syndrome. So patient may require a lot of fluid in the early phase of the ECMO. And then definitely patient is requiring a transfusion. So TRALI and other risk is always there. Along with that, all complications which are associated with intensive care units, such as delirium, fear, pain, awareness, these all are complications again associated with ECMO. For patients who are on VECMO, there is an additional complication where there is a risk of ischemia of the lower limb, or there is a more bleeding because you are accessing the artery. So sometimes these patients require a fasciotomy because of compartment syndrome, or even sometimes they require amputation. So what is important for us to understand, this is not a single person's job, this is the teamwork. So the team should consist of a minimum of ECMO specialist who is overall looking after the ECMO, along with the anesthesiologist, critical care specialist, cardiothoracic surgeon, along with the other specialists depending upon the patient condition, like a nephrologist, cardiologist, chest physician, hematologist, and sometimes general surgeons, because so many times patient may require some general surgical procedure. Along with that, the perfusionist, critical care nurse, respiratory therapist, physiotherapist, nutritionist, psychologist, and medical social worker, who can be an important person to make a link between the patient attendant as well as the clinicians or other person who are taking care, to make a good communication among the family. So to conclude, ECMO is an advanced form of cardiorespiratory support where we can support the lungs by doing VVECMO, and we can support heart and lung both by doing VECMO. VECMO should be reserved only for the patients who are having a reversible pathology, and or if we know that there is no reversibility, at least they are a potential candidate for transplant. And the dictum says you should think of ECMO if you feel that the chances of survival is 50%, and you should do ECMO when you feel that the mortality can go as high as 80% with the conventional treatment, because ECMO itself is an extensive procedure associated with a lot of complication. So It should be thought only when we are at the um, extremes of our conventional management. With the expanding potential indications and improving outcome, and thanks to technology for that we are having a miniature cannula, miniature circuits, and cannulas are so thin and so good that chances of vascular injuries and risk has been minimized. There is a significant interest in the early application of ECMO in indications where we know that there is a fair chance of survival of these patients. Patient should always be managed by a multidisciplinary specialist when a patient is on ECMO. So as I said, that whole team should be involved. And we know that acute kidney injury is common, and other organ involvement can also happen. So ECMO, complications of ECMO should be well known and should always have a strong suspicion for ECMO complications. And one must be aware that when we are integrating patient with the circuit, our machine, it is the man behind the machine who is important and who should be highly suspicious about the associated complications, or should always monitor these patients thoroughly so we can avoid the common complications associated with ECMO. So the goal during ECMO, we can divide it, the early goal, which is initially resuscitation. You try to stabilize your patient, you look for recovery, and once a patient has recovered, you try to rehabilitate the patient. But the late goals, our first goal is, even if it's a delayed one, if the organ can recover. If not, then possibly we can think of organ transplantation, which we have done during this COVID pandemic multiple times. We have got the lung transplant done for those patients who were non-recoverable. And if nothing is working, our patient has certain complication as ICH or non-recoverable condition, then it's a very important for the team that which they should initiate the palliative care when we don't know that we know that there is no recovery or there is no possibility for the transplant. So always look for functional outcome of your patient, because if there is no functional outcome for continuing ECMO, there is no benefit. So important is keep following up your patient and talking to the family. Communication to the family is probably very, very important. And especially when you are breaking a bad news that non-recovery of organs, or there is no improvement on ECMO, and there is a possibility a patient has developed certain complication which is irreversible, then possibly talking to the family, communicating to the family, and bereavement, handling these situations probably become very, very important. As it is important in ICU, probably it is more important during that. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.